And welcome to the weekly trip. Today, we are going to have a lot of fun. We're going to get a chance to meet and talk to Dennis Tobler, my co-host for Football Forecast Weekly. Dennis has been a professional gambler in the Midwest before he moved out to Vegas. He has some stories and some money to prove it. This should be a lot of fun. Stay tuned. And welcome to another edition of the weekly trip. I'm the aforementioned Trip Mitchell, and today with one of my best friends, Dennis Tobler from Las Vegas. And I've had the good fortune working with Dennis for a lot of years, most recently, I should say, on Football Forecast Weekly, along with Fred Wallen. And we've had a lot of fun. And Dennis, you picked up some cool green today. Tell us about it.
Today,
some money.
All day every day this weekend. Hundreds of thousands of it.
So tell me about the contest. You came in with it within a game of winning a lot of money, and within 4 games all season of winning a cool $1 million. Do you feel very proud of your accomplishment, or are you frustrated that you missed?
I'm frustrated I missed. I missed mostly the games that the Las Vegas Raiders were involved in, which is crazy because I thought I knew more about that than anything else. And if I would have probably been right 4 more times, I would have won the $1 million. But nonetheless, I finished 23rd out of 4,087. And takes a while for their contest there. Great contest at the Circa Hotel. I have to mention that the Circa is like the old time Stardust, and it's really breaking some ground here. They gave away $6 million in a Survivor contest, $4 million in the contest, Circa Millions contest. So they're passing out money big time. It took me 5 days to get my share. You have to go in, sign paperwork, et cetera, to get it all out. So you had a little party Friday night also.
You had a heck of a season. Tell me about the Circa. I have not been there, but it's supposed to be the casino that is changing a lot in Vegas, in a spot where traditionally you don't see it, downtown.
Yeah, it's great. They've taken over a lot of the casinos downtown, the group that owns Circa, and they have a fabulous sports book there, which I'm interested in. They've they took a page out of the Stardust book. And they have a great big swimming pool on the roof that has screens in front of it too. So you can sit in the pool or beside the pool and watch all the games and bet the sports at the same time. It's a new wave sports book. There's nothing like it, that's for sure. Up on top, they have a legacy club that's meant for you and I. And that's all I'll say about that. But we were there. We took some pictures on the red carpet on Friday night, and I love the place. They have real bookmakers. It's the first time I can remember Las Vegas having guys that really knew what was coming in money-wise and moving the numbers according to the money since about 1995. So they're kind of taking back Las Vegas when it comes to fair and free gambling. We're getting fair odds, and they're able to pay and take large amounts. And it's just a nice, refreshing change from the corporate setup we've been going through here for 15 years.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. In the old days, the Lou D'Amicos, the people like that had a lot of power, and that's slowly waned, hasn't it?
Yes, there's the corporations come in and they squeeze every penny out of everything, and they don't allow the free market to work in the sports betting world in particular, and they can't seem to keep their act together to keep the horse racing streams coming to all the casinos on a regular basis. So it puts a regular full-time gambler in a fix, trying to make money off and on because of the corporate situation here, there, and everywhere. But yeah, the Circa is a refreshing new place downtown, and they revived that into the Fremont Street experience, and hope we can work with them someday.
Well, you have been a professional gambler for many more years than you'll admit. And despite the $100 haircut, you've had some runs over the year. One of my favorite stories, and I have to say that I was so fortunate, I was asked to work on a documentary called Now Place Your Bets, which has won a ton of awards. And Dennis has some of them just over his shoulder. But the documentary has gone out to film festivals and is kicking ass and taking names. And I'm so proud to be involved with it. But one of my favorite stories that we didn't talk about in the documentary is your run-in with Spilatro. And Spilatro, for those of you who saw the movie Casino, he was one of the guys who came in from Chicago, and he was played by Joe Pesci in the movie. And he tried to muscle you one day and was your interior decorator maybe saved you from getting into a shootout. Can you tell that story?
Oh, wow. It's really interesting you bring that up because I watched a show just this weekend about the guy who came in to fleece me named Fat Herbie Blitzstein. And they had a show on, I think it was 2020, over the weekend about that whole era of time. I'm thinking, you should have contacted me. I could have filled you in a little better. No, one day Tony sent a couple of his thugs over to my office and said they wanted 20% of my board. And that day I was a legitimate sports information provider to sports books and big time gamblers all over the country. And we were doing good business, 20 grand a week. So they come in and they wanted 20% of my board. So they were expected to come in each week and grab 4 grand out of my hand. I said, no way. And they looked at me like, are you crazy? I mean, we're telling you we want 4 grand out of this place every week and you'll stay out of trouble. Well, I was just a hayseed from Nebraska back then. And actually, to this day, I'm a hayseed, but nobody's going to pull anything over on me like that. So I'm sitting there and I knew they had guns and I had a 38 in my right-hand drawer, so I wasn't that worried about it. And my dad was standing in the doorway behind these guys and he had gray hair and he looked kind of like a cop or something, They didn't know who he was. They sat down in my office and pretty soon they say, we want this and this. And I said, no, you're not getting anything. I don't know what makes you think I owe you anything. I'm not going to contribute. I don't play the game or whatever. And they threatened me and they said, you're going to wish you did. And so shortly after that, they did chase me out into the desert on the east side. And we had a little scream around in my Cadillac. They chased me in the dirt and I screamed around, ran back into town, got away. But yeah, they came in, wanted the money, but I had this office that had these mirrors. If you remember back in the 70s and 80s, these gold flaked mirrors that you'd put on the walls as accent. Well, I had them on both sides of my desk there in Las Vegas. I looked like a kingpin sitting behind my desk back in the 80s. Anyway, they were sitting in front of me and my dad with his gray hair was behind me. And I'm done talking to these guys and they look at each other and they say, well, it's better to be our friends here than not be our friends. And they got up and they walked out. And I got to thinking about that and come to find out later, I heard that they thought that they were being set up by the police because there was a policeman behind them and they thought the cameras were rolling behind the Mexican style mirrors. So it was a lucky day for me. I've had a lucky day in Las Vegas every day, I guess, since then. That's been that must have been 1980.
So, Dennis,
84.
when you reached into your drawer to grab your 38, anytime you're thinking about who you're going to shoot first, that's an interesting day.
Well, I figured only one of them had a gun, honestly. There was one big mouth and then one guy was sitting there who looked like Fat Herbie Blitzstein. And that's who it was.
Yeah, and he got shot. God, I remember he got shot over by my old house over off Pecos and Fat Herbie. But
that story was on 2020. That story was on 2020 this weekend. About
really, I will have
about Fat Herbie Blitzstein, about who he took in and who he took down and everything else. So I mean, I sat there and I watched that in awe because it just seems like yesterday.
That he was putting the muscle on you. And Collada, we had Frank Collada in the movie, who was Joe Pesci's in real life, the character that Joe Pesci's played, right-hand man. And Frank Collada helped turn the fortunes of the mob because he ratted out the mob. Not something that many people live and get away with.
No, he he had a hit out on him for his entire life. And at one point, he tried to hide out in the witness protection program. He didn't like it. He didn't like not being free, be able to do what he wanted to do. So he moved here to Las Vegas, and he got the well-known lawyer, Oscar Goodman, to back him up a little bit. And he just said, to hell with it. If they're going to shoot me, they're going to shoot me. So after a few years, he became so well-known around town that it'd be pretty risky. When I interviewed him, he says, nobody's going to take the shot at me now.
It was the demise of organized crime in Las Vegas.
And we're talking about 1985.
No, we're talking about 1981, the end of 1981. It was over.
And what did Frank Collada do after that?
Well, I went into the witness protection program for years. Not much else to do. I was in a supposedly being protected by the Marshal Service.
Can you tell us about where or how they dealt with you? It was a boring life, or?
Well, of course, it's a boring life, anytime you get out of a pattern that you were living in for so many years, and then you become a normal citizen, it's pretty hard to conform, but you have to if you want to stay alive.
And how long were you in the witness protection program?
Locked up for 2 years in it and free on it for 2 years, so a total of 4 years.
What time did you come out, and what did you do at that point?
I went to work. I found I was able to get employment, which was very difficult to do, and I changed my life.
But when I did interview him, we had to move around downtown to 3 or 4 different hotels before we landed in one where we could sit for 45 minutes and get the interview. And then we booked it out of there as quick as we could. So it wasn't like it was a simple thing to do, but it was just part of the game, I guess. And he did
Frank
show up
Collada,
he showed up the red carpet for Now Place Your Bets premiere here in Las Vegas. Frank did. I remember you sat by him, I believe, in the movie theater.
for a very short period.
We lost Frank Collada last year, but I got to know him really well. And the stories that he told me, I have a huge amount of recordings that were not in the documentary, where we talked about all kinds of stuff. And he knows where all the bodies are buried, believe me.
And it's funny, Dennis, that's an expression that you hear in corporate world, but when it comes to Vegas mob world, that's a literal expression.
That's right. They show up in bones every now and then.
Yeah.
We find them.
So did the mob do a better job running Vegas than corporations?
Absolutely. The mob's the only people that ever knew how to run the casinos. And when the corporations took over, they hired the same operators to run the places that were before. They just got rid of the top guys. I mean, gambling is not a very tough business to run. The odds are in your favor in every single game in the casino. You'd have to be pretty dumb, like a Donald J. Trump or something like that, not to make a casino work. Okay, but there's no way you can fail in the casino business. And then when they got the big money behind it, then the corporations came to town, and now it's just to milk you for the dollar, from the hot dog to the Starbucks.
What year did you move to Vegas, Dennis?
I moved to Vegas. Well, I was out here before the 80s, but in 81, I moved here finally. But I was here in 78 and 76. I'd come out and play the NCAA basketball tournaments and some NFL football. And I'd be a bookmaker back in the Midwest at the time, and then I'd take the summer off. It's kind of a routine there for 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 years.
And to be a professional gambler, you've got to look at it like you have nothing assured. Every day you've got to get by on your wit and your guts and your inclination. Is that a scary way to make a living?
It is for people that can't do it.
It was funny. I have
There's a hell of a lot of them, I'll tell you that. There's a hell of a lot of them.
Dennis, I was in St. Louis this weekend, and we were watching ESPN, and they had their betting expert on. And I won't get into names, but I said to my wife, who was in federal law enforcement, I said, this guy owes the bookies a lot of money. He's had a bad year. And she goes, how in the hell do you know that? And I said, well, I have my sources. And it's funny how people can be experts on TV, but it's a whole different story to be an expert when you're placing your bets every day.
Yeah, I mean, if you can live off of it, and when you're a professional gambler, you do what every other business does. You pay the government taxes, you pay them your Social Security, you pay the FDIC, you pay all of that stuff. Comes out of your own pocket if you're a professional gambler. And if you're a winning professional gambler, you don't have enough losing tickets to offset it. So I've said it many times, gamblers pay more taxes than anyone. And I think it's true.
How many pro gamblers do you think there are when it comes to sports and the horses in Vegas who make a good living at it?
Man, it's so hard to say now, Trip, because I believe that since 2020 and the pandemic came, I believe there's about 400,000 more people in Las Vegas now than there was then. We're edging up on 3 million people here. So it's really hard to tell the different factions. I mean, there's factions that hang out at the South Point who have their own TV shows that think they're big time. And then there's factions at the Circa that do the same thing. I do know this, that there's very few people who move enough money around that it matters in the market. And that's the only thing you judge it from. So no, not very many professionals here. The professionals here are like some of my buddies like Steve Penny and some of these others. They're already in the black book. It's not the black book, it's the Griffin book. The Griffin book is the book against advantage gamblers. If you get too good and you win too much from the sports books, or you're a card counter and can win too much off the blackjack tables, you go in the Griffin book. Your face is ID'd, and every time you walk in the casino, you can't play blackjack and you can't do what you do best. And it's bad when you get to that point.
Have you ever been a blackjack player?
Yes, I was, but not to the level of our Football Forecast Weekly guest, Fred Wallen, and my partner, Steve Penny, and John Master-Giacomo. I hope he doesn't mind me saying his name on TV, but he's a local video producer here that's did many movies. And all of us came here to count cards or to find an advantage one way or another. But those guys really did it, and they can still do it to this day. And they're not able to play at the tables because they don't want anybody to take advantage of the casino.
And for those of you who are wondering, what the heck is card counting? Card counting is essentially determining how many tens or higher are left in a deck, because that will give the player an advantage. Now, in the old days, when you're playing a single deck or double deck, card counting was much more important. And Dennis, I don't know if I've told you this story, but I was lucky enough to live with some beautiful women in college, and two of them answered an ad in the Boston Globe about girls from Harvard or MIT or BU or BC who wanted to come out and play poker in Vegas. And back then they did. And two of my roommates came out and had a great summer. A Harvard professor got them going, and there are different groups. There was the MIT card counting group, but back then, as an attractive young lady, you had an advantage and you didn't get thrown out as much. You might have gotten the benefit of the doubt. And out of the 10 women that came out, 7 won pretty considerable amount of money, 1 lost, and 2 were kind of even. So, I'd like to hang with them more than you, Dennis. So just to say that.
Card counting was a good deal, and I don't think it should be against the law or against the rules any longer. They use 7 decks, and if somebody's bright enough to go in there and they shuffle after they get through 3/4 of the deck, and if you're bright enough to go in there and beat that game, you should be paid.
I agree, and the thing is that it's encouraging people to play. But on the sports side of things, you've been making your living as a sports bettor for over 40 years. The amount of information that's getting out now, it's got to be tougher to make a living now than it was 40 years ago. Or am I wrong?
No, I think you're wrong. And just because of this, first of all, there's just as much misinformation in sports as there is in politics. So in the old days, it's pretty easy to see who's hot and who wasn't. There's only very few teams to pick from. And if you get clear back to the old days, there wasn't any totals. on games. Now you've got 500 ways to bet every game. You know, you've got so many options that's where people lose themselves. And now it's easier because the market moves in tremendous directions both ways. And when I talk about the market, I'm talking about the point spreads on games and the money line on games and matches, boxing, whatever you want to talk about. And with that massive movement comes the ability of people to know what they're doing, to grab those good numbers and always have a positive edge over what's going on. So actually, if you listen to TV all week, I'll give you an example, and I don't know if the show's time dated or not, but the Dallas Cowboys are America's team, and we had to sit there and listen to Tony Romo talk about they had every chance to come back the whole night, yet they got their ass beat by the 49ers at home. Okay, so as long as
Maybe
you listen to
a good
TV,
idea is not to run a draw play with 14 seconds left and no timeouts.
these guys, I tell you what, when it comes to coaching football, it's very hard to find a good coach. It's very hard to find a good quarterback. And it's even harder to find people who can pick sports winners. And people are lost in this malfunction of who's going to get 30 yards and who's going to get 60 yards and how many completions are they going to have and who's going to win the coin flip. And it just throws the market in turmoil. And with every state that comes along, there's books that go in there to operate, and there's no regulations for them. So DraftKings can put out a number in New Mexico and Colorado and put out a different number in New Jersey and a different number here in Vegas when they get a license, because they're not licensed here yet. So the world is opened up to guys like me. If you have the ability to have the connections to get around the country, the point spreads in 26 states that take sports betting now is actually a gold mine. If you wanted to just sit around and take your big pieces, you could probably do that very easily. You always have to pay your taxes though. So you can just put that on the record.
Yeah, no, my wife is retired, so there's no problem there. You know, she's not with the feds any longer. Who was the best sports bettor that you knew? Do you have any legends that you can remember back to?
Lefty Rosenthal was by far the best and the first and the real one. I mean, Bugsy Siegel was a hell of a sports bettor. And he came here and built the Flamingo and then got shot in the eye in Los Angeles trying to be a TV or trying to be a movie star. There was no TV then. But Lefty Rosenthal knew everything there was to know about every team. He had somebody inside every locker. Think about it back then. There were only 12 teams here, 8 teams there in these leagues. He had somebody in every locker room. He knew the trainers. He knew the owners. He moved the money here in Vegas. He moved the mob money from Chicago and Kansas City and Detroit and all of those Midwest areas in Las Vegas. He moved that money through here. So they knew what numbers they were putting out, and they knew how to make the money by bookmaking, taking your 10% and giving everybody the fair shake. Okay.
And by the way, Lefty Rosenthal was played by Robert De Niro in the movie Casino. Definitely one of my top 10 movies of all time.
Yeah, I guess if you want to make sure you watch the documentary Now Place Your Bets, but you want to watch the movie Casino because it's still current, because guys like me are still alive that were alive then doing those things. And yes, that's a great movie, and that's a great analogy between them all.
Yeah, and getting back to Now Place Your Bets, how did you decide that there needed to be a definitive documentary on sports betting?
Well, before 2017, there was no legalized sports betting anywhere but Nevada. And we'd been through every effort we could. My documentary documents me traveling all over the world, trying to make sports betting legal and trying to draw attention to it so it could be legalized in America. And it just took a long, long time, and there was no reason for it, in my opinion. What's the main question?
Well, why did you decide to spend a couple $100,000 making this movie?
Well, I thought the story needed to be told, that it was at that point, at the end of 2016, we did not believe there would ever be legalized sports betting in America. And we were discouraged about that. So the years prior, I threw everything together I'd done for 40 years and said, look at the effort we've put in. This is what we've done. And I don't know if it had any effect on anything, but in 2017, things started to roll the other direction. And now bingo, here in 2022, we've got 26 states and more every day coming on taking legalized sports bets. So
well, the
it's
tax
kind of
benefit
amazing.
to these states is amazing. So you talk about sports betting, and we have to get to the dark side, the fixes. But what I've always maintained is that legalized sports betting is eliminating that corruption and those fixes, because the more people that are part of it making a living, they're the people that can catch these aberrations, these cheaters, much easier than anyone else. And the example I point out is the Arizona State point shaving scandal a number of years ago, where these young kids from Tempe, Arizona were coming up and placing bets at books. And within an hour of their placing the first bet, this whole thing was opened up because the sportsbook director saw it.
Yes, that's true. Nothing's going to float into the market without the bookmakers knowing where the money's coming from. Okay, that's the bottom line. The bookmakers know where the money's coming from. That's how they adjust their lines. So when something gets out of whack, they know it's out of whack. That, I might mention, is a really finite example of it. There was no money. It was only bet in Vegas. There was just a very few of them, and they still caught them. So, I mean, if you get any bigger than that, you're dead in the water for sure. And there's another big factor here. Quarterbacks weren't paid $87 million a year back when they fixed games. Baseball players weren't paid $120 million for 5-year contracts when they fixed games. So they pay people too much money now to fix games.
How about at the college level?
College level, how you going to bet enough money to make it an instant? I mean, if you're going to fix a game, you want to make 100 grand, you're going to bet 100 grand on Western Michigan. Well, the first time you do, they know it's a fixed game because nobody bets 100 grand on Western Michigan. So who else are you going to fix? Nobody on scholarship at a major college headed for the pros is going to do it. I don't think games are fixed. I think what's fixed are the numbers, the people operating the numbers, the times they put the numbers out, the times they take the numbers down. Things like that are what the fix is in on. You got to be brighter than the technology.
Who offers the best value out there?
You talking about sports betting?
Yeah, sports betting value.
Well, college basketball is the best sports betting value. If you're talking about seasons or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
College basketball followed by college football. And none of the pro leagues are, you can't make a money betting the pro leagues. That's all there is to it. You can see by the fact that 60 wins out of 90 wins in the circuit contest wins you $500,000. So nobody can pick better than that. If they could, they'd be here winning the millions of dollars.
And that, you bring up a very good point there, Dennis. These guys that you see on these commercials and on the internet, that are winning 80% of games, it's the contest like the old Hilton contest or the Circa now, where the best guys in the country put up their $1,000 or more. And these are their best picks. And no one is winning over 70. Anyone who tells you you can get picks from them and you're going to win 70% of the time, they are full of it. It's not the case.
One guy, Tom Gordon. Tom Gordon won 70% of his picks at the Circa and walked off with $1.55 million cash.
But you were only a couple games short of him.
4 games short.
With $1.5 million, would you be doing this interview right now if you'd won the million? Of course you would. You're a good guy. But,
I mean, money's nothing to me, honestly. As long as I have enough money to do what I want, I don't care. So,
how much do you think you've won over the years? Any guesses?
Well, I'm not going to guess that. That's for sure. I'm not even going to tell you how much I've made this year.
Okay,
we're only 15 days in. 16 days in.
Has it been? How was Wild Card Weekend for you?
It was fantastic. Won every game.
Wow! Congratulations.
Every game.
And who do you like tonight on the Monday night game?
Oh, and by the way, on the Bengals Raiders game, I took every dime I made from the Circa win and bet it on the Bengals to make up for the stupid plays of picking the Raiders against the Raiders in that contest. So I doubled my Circa winnings by betting on Cincinnati in that first wild card game because I knew for a fact the Raiders were not going to cover. Finally. So I doubled my money on the Circa win, and that's how you do it.
Okay, you had a good feel. Who's your favorite for? Well, we're going to be doing on Football Forecast Weekly. We're going to be doing our Super Bowl show, so we won't get into anything now. But by the way, that show was so much fun to do each and every week. You and Fred,
big time too. It's hitting the big time. If you Google Football Forecast Weekly, you can see every place that's seen and heard. You know, I've showed that off to a few people downtown and told them, hey, if you want some brand ambassadors, we're the kind of people to brand ambassadorship with because we can get you out there. We have, how many press avails do you and I have every year? 200?
we have a few. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so I think we are excellently set up to be marketed, and we have the knowledge and the background that certainly we could bring some expertise to any kind of gambling shows there are coming in the future, and there are going to be a lot of them. Vegas is going to be a hot spot, man. We've got the East-West Shrine game coming this weekend. Next weekend, the Pro Bowl. Then in the future, it's the draft, and then the Super Bowl. I mean, we're going to get the A's. They're going to come here. Vegas is just going to be the sports capital too, as well.
You know, it's funny, Dennis, is one year I went down to the Super Bowl. Last time it was in Tempe before they built the new stadium. And I flew into Arizona and had a great time at the Super Bowl. It was Pittsburgh, Dallas. And, you know, but the whole Phoenix was just hyped for the Super Bowl. And I fly home to Vegas and realized that more people were in Vegas that weekend. And it didn't seem like anything out of norm. You know, just Vegas every weekend, 400,000 or 500,000 people. And now with all the new hotels and all, the Super Bowl in Vegas will be the largest sporting event ever. I mean, it is going to be incredible. I can't wait for it.
Even the draft, the upcoming draft this year, they've got it set up so big that they say 700,000 people are going to be here for the draft.
That is incredible. Can you imagine?
I don't know how to explain that, where they're all going to stay, but they have things set up on the fountains of the Bellagio for the draft. The guys are going to walk out into the fountains of the Bellagio and stuff like that. So it's just going to be a show place forever, and we'll probably have to do TV from here forever. So.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. And Dennis, you have had a colorful life. Anytime you're reaching into your drawer for your 38 and you're figuring you're going to shoot the skinny guy first because he has the gun, you've had a colorful life.
That's just a few of the stories, Trip, my friend. That's before I got to Las Vegas. I mean, that's after I got to Las Vegas. Before I got to Las Vegas is quite a story. So,
well, give us one. What it's like you were making
I used to deal with the Small Doan family in Denver, the mafia family that ran Denver. They used to be my layoff for my bookmaking operations in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas. I ran those bookmaking operations when I was heavy on money. I laid it off through the Small Doan family. And then, of course, they became famous as one of the famous mob families. And Chauncey Small Doan, they wrote books about him. And that's one of the colorful times of my life, going to Denver, settling up with the Small Doan family at their fancy villas, eating Italian food until you popped, you know? I mean, it's fantastic. And I was young then, drove around the Cadillac Eldorado, had the world by the tail. Now I ended up in Vegas and I have to work like this all the time.
It's kind of a fun way to make a living, isn't it?
Yes, if you call it a living.
Okay, well, we do, and thanks to the Cincinnati Bengals for doubling your circle win. And once again, you finished 43rd out of how many? 4,000? What's that?
23rd.
23rd out of how many?
4,087.
Statistically, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's what they told me there when I was collecting, but it didn't make me any happier because I know I could definitely win that contest and I just didn't do it.
Well, maybe we'll get a chance to, on a future Football Forecast Weekly, get a chance to talk to the winner, but only a couple games better.
Yeah, I know the winner. I know the guy. He's earned his win. He earned his way up from 2001. I mean, this guy that won the Circa actually won an offshore contest in Antigua in 2001 when I was there filming them to expose them to betting in the United States, to bettors in the United States. So that's part of the reason the offshore flourished. That's part of the reason sports betting came around after 20 years. And that's part of the reason why it's legal today. And I'm so glad to see somebody like that with a connection to something in the background like that come and win the $1.5 million. Fantastic, huh?
Oh, that is. I wish it was you. But Dennis, we've had a lot of fun. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on the weekly trip.
Well, thank you, Trip.
Now, Mark Klein's musings.
These are kind of life's lessons from the racetrack, and to kick 2022 off, we're going to do more life's lessons as well. So for the general audience, some life's lessons to start your year. Number one, and it's a little one. If you are driving your automobile through dense fog, you do not see any better by putting your face closer to the windshield. Write it down, take it home. Number two, if you are driving your automobile through dense fog, turning the radio down does not make the fog go away. It doesn't care. It's fog. Life's lesson number three. If you are driving your automobile through dense fog and that fog happens to be on the inside of your windshield, you ought not be driving right around then. So remember that as well. Things you need to know about life. Food, Thanksgiving time. You people who are doing unnatural things with cranberries, and you know who you are. Cranberry relish, cranberry mold, cranberry pie. Stop it. Stop it now. God intends you to eat cranberries in one form only, jellied, canned, and sugared by the Ocean Spray Company of Lakeville, Massachusetts. And as all good Americans know, the best piece of cranberry sauce is the end piece out of the can with the can rim still on it. Cookies. There are people in the world, and I feel awful for them, but it's true, who believe there is more than one type of cookie other than Nestle's Toll House chocolate chip. These people are wrong. Enough said. Let's talk about sports one more little time here. A friend of mine goes to the track with me quite often, a very funny man named Amos Chang. Here's my favorite racetrack expression as passed on to you by me from him. Just remember, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win. Life's lessons, words to live by. Have a great year this year. I'll see you later on this year with more fun stuff on this lovely, lovely cast that we're doing. And always remember, don't love stuff that can't love you back. Thanks for being with me. My name is Mark Klein. I'll see you around the track or on your computer. Bye-bye.
My favorite piece of gambling paraphernalia in the world is in the lobby of the Plaza Hotel. It is from 1974, the Elvis Presley slot machine. This machine is so old, it's a quarter-operated machine. You still have to put the quarters in one by one. There is no bill feed. It's that old. But here's the great thing about it. When you get a jackpot, Elvis Aaron Presley, dead for 40 years, he will still sing a song to you from the bowels of the machine. And this is irresistible to people my age. I check in 10 o'clock in the morning, Plaza Hotel. There's a woman there, she's my age, she's working the Elvis machine like a second job. Quarter, pull, quarter, pull. Get my key, go to my room and take a nap, come down at noon for lunch. Same lady at the same machine. I have lunch, go for a walk down Fremont Street, come back at 3, same lady at the same machine. Back to my room, I take a nap, have a dinner show at 6, shower, down at 6 o'clock for 3 shows that night, get done at 2 o'clock in the morning, back in the lobby, same lady at the same machine. I said, ma'am, God bless you. You stick that many quarters up my rear end, I'll sing Hound Dog to you.